Hi everyone, my name is Caroline Smith and this is my video that is about my interview for Teach Ed 3211. My partner is Kelsey Wilson. Our schedules were just really busy this week with holidays and stuff going on, so we weren't able to make a video together, so we are doing separate videos. But yes, her name is Kelsey Wilson and mine is Caroline Smith. Alright, so here's just some background information about our who we interviewed. Her name is Angelina Bulico, and here's some information. This is how we met. I went to high school with her. She's one of my closest friends. We've kept in contact after high school. And I think part of the reason why we became best friends is I just thought she had such an interesting story that was really different, and I really liked learning about it. All right, so she was born in Russia. She was born in, all right, I don't know how to pronounce Russian, but I'll try my best. She was born in Mineriline Vody, which is a small town in Stavropol, Russia. It's a small town, but yes, she was born in Russia, and she was adopted by an Italian-American family at age 4. So she knew no English coming in. She actually lived in an orphanage, and the reason why she was in an orphanage is because her family could not afford the financial responsibilities that came with her because she was born with a distorted leg. So her knee and her foot were almost right next to each other. Her shin, there wasn't really one there, so it needed to be amputated. And that cost a lot, and they couldn't afford it. So she was put up for adoption, and she had a lot of surgeries, and she's now an amputee. She's one of the most inspiring human beings I've ever met. She's not just my friend, but she's an inspiring role model. At age 17, she started a nonprofit organization called Life Without Limbs. She talks to different kids in hospitals, young amputees, and talks to them about the struggles that she overcame, and she actually joined the swim team and basketball team, so it did not interfere with her trying to join organizations she wanted to be a part of. And she went to the University of Iowa because she wanted to be a biomedical engineer, and she is now getting her master's degree so she can design prosthetics for young children. So I just thought that since she's such an inspiring and meaningful person to me, I really wanted to do as an interview because she did have to learn a second language, English. Her first language was Russian. So anyways, that's a lot of background information, so I'll head into the interview portion. Oh, actually, one last thing. Her sister was adopted at age 6 and went immediately into kindergarten. So Angelina was adopted a little younger. Yes, they both are now fluent in English, but I thought it was really interesting that I got to hear them looking back on their experiences learning English, and even though they lived in the same family, they were adopted by the exact same family, they had very different experiences. So you'll hear me reflect back on those, that they had 2 different experiences, very different. So our interviewee was named Angelina, and her sister is named Vita. Okay, so here's some of the questions we asked. One of our main topics was funds of knowledge, and our questions under that were, where were you born? How old were you when you first came to the U.S.? Are there any customs from your first country that you still practice? And do you have any special skills or knowledge because you were from a different country? Another topic that was really relevant in our interview was 4 types of learners, and it's, do you consider yourself a long-term English learner? How long did it take for you to fluently understand the lessons being taught in English? And how did your family support you as you learned the English language? And the third topic, we had 5, but these are the 3 that will be predominantly discussed in this video, is the BICS versus CALP. And our questions were, what was the most difficult process to learn when learning English? Reading, writing, listening, or spelling? And looking back, did you learn more English in the classroom or in social situations? So moving on to what did you learn about the human aspect of the interview experience moving to the U.S., learning English, and being enculturated to a new landscape? So this really was about funds of knowledge for me. I learned that even over the past 20 years, Angelina has not lost contact with her biological family. She still calls them on important holidays in Russia. And I thought that was just really interesting. She does consider knowing Russian. and knowing two different languages as skills. She thinks that's actually really beneficial for her. And I think it's really interesting that even though she was adopted by an Italian American family, she does celebrate her roots as a Russian. They did even keep their biological names. Well, there it's Angelina, and then Vita is also Russian. So I thought that was really interesting. Um, and this also related to Agra's culture blends. So one of her questions is, do you remember experiencing culture shock, and do you believe that understanding the country's customs is necessary in learning that language? Right, so it's interesting because Angelina and Vita actually felt differently as kids. Angelina was adopted younger, and she never experienced that culture shock. I mean, she did, but to a slighter extent, where Vita actually would not eat the food, she would not respond, she would not try to learn the English language. She had a much more difficult time, and I think that's part of it because she was adopted at an older age. So I think age does have something to do with it. Angelina felt differently, where she said that culture isn't necessary in learning that language, but it could have just been that she was so young, it didn't play an important role in her learning, whereas Vita did experience that culture shock. In an interview, Angelina mentioned that when Vita was first adopted, she would not sleep in her own bed. She would only sleep in a bed with one of her family members because she wasn't used to having her own bed. All right, so moving on, what evidence did you discover that ties specifically to the big ideas that inform your questions? All right, so a lot of our questions was about the 4 different types of English language learners, and it was really exciting because I was able to put that the material I've learned in this class and put it to practical use. And it's always really exciting to use information you've learned in class and be able to put it to practical use in a real world setting. So I was able to identify what type of English language learner Angelina would have been classified when she was learning English as a kid. And I identified her as a recent arrivals with adequate schooling. So this is contradictory in a way because she did not have schooling when she was a kid. She was in an orphanage and she didn't have any access to schooling there. But there are a few characteristics of recent arrivals with adequate schooling of why I would categorize her as that. First, she caught up fast really academically, and that's a characteristic of that type of learner. And Angelina fit under that she did catch up fairly quickly for knowing zero English, and by about 3rd or 4th grade, she was completely caught up. Also, this type of learner can be positively and negatively impacted by social economic factors. And this was one of the main reasons why I categorized her as this type of learner. Angelina was definitely impacted, but in a positive way, by her social factors because her family was so supportive of her. They immediately got her English lessons, and then also they continued to have her have Russian lessons. So she was developing both languages at the same time, which was extraordinary to find out. I actually did not know that, so it's really exciting. And then also, she was influenced positively by economic factors. Her family was well off, and they were able to afford to have her have private lessons as well as go to a small Catholic school. So she was influenced by that. She had both economic and social factors going on her side, so she was positively influenced by that, which is why she caught up academically so quickly. And then also, I want to talk about Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. So this was really interesting. What I decided based off this is, so Angelina went and she was adopted, but she was at a younger age. She was not in kindergarten. She stayed home for preschool and then slowly merged into preschool and then kindergarten. So she was able to catch up much more quickly than her sister. Her sister was adopted and then had 2 days and went right into the beginning of kindergarten. So she had no chance. Well, bad phrasing. But what I meant to say is that she was overwhelmed. The other kids already knew the colors, they knew numbers. They went in there with background information, and Vita did not have that. So as a result, she was constantly playing catch up. For many years, she was playing catch up with the other students. She didn't catch up till at least middle school. So a lot of years she was feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, and Angelina actually had to go to her class and calm her down. So I thought that related to Vygotsky's zone of proximal development because it was well beyond Vita's zone of proximal development. We talked about how it should just be right above where you can reach help with you can understand it with the help of an adult. And I think it was way above that. It definitely overwhelmed her. Whereas Angelina, it was in her zone of proximal development, and I think that did have to do with the ages that they were adopted, and that Angelina had that buffer zone to learn English and then went into kindergarten. She had the transition phase, whereas Vita went immediately into kindergarten and felt overwhelmed. And she did have many, many years that she was catching up with her peers. Right, and lastly, given what you learned, what new questions emerge for you specifically related to your own role as educators regarding how we work with ELL immigrant populations? So I have two topics I'd like to talk about. Um, First off, Catholic schools. So she went to a small private Catholic school in South County. Um, it's an affluent school. There's families are definitely upper middle class, but I don't know if they even had an ELL program there. She actually had to have private lessons at home, so I don't think they had that program there. So I had a question about if many small private Catholic schools do have um, those programs now. I don't know if they have ESL programs to begin with, or if they have they developed in the past years. So I'd really like to research which small private Catholic schools do have those. Since they're so small, I don't know if they have them or not. And then also, I want to talk about BICS versus CALP. This was something that formed a question for me. So we've talked about how usually CALP, which is formed in social settings, develops faster. Well, Angelina was the opposite of this. She actually developed BICS faster, and part of this is, well, she reported that she actually learned to read and write much faster than trying to communicate with others, listening and speaking. Um, and she actually preferred to learn in a school setting versus learning in social settings. She did have social anxiety. She did not like to talk to her peers. Part of this is that she was a little embarrassed of her accent. She didn't feel confident talking to others. But since she spent so much time alone reading, she actually developed that really quickly for her age in her limited English skills. So, anyways, I just thought that that was interesting and wanted to note that she actually developed her reading faster than in social settings. She didn't develop being able to listen and speak until many years later. And I think that has to do with the fact that she did not have that exposure, so she could not learn that. To be able to listen and speak, you need to listen to others do it. And without those interactions, she couldn't learn from it. Whereas she was in the classroom a lot, she was very quiet, and she just wanted to read to herself. So I thought that was an exception to what we have learned in the text, so I wanted to point that out. But anyways, I think that's it about my interview that I wanted to share. And I think that's it. Thank you.